I love this story. When I first heard this story, I was very skeptical. I didn't get the whole Jesus walking on the water thing. How could that be possible? How could anybody walk on the water? I still really don't get it. One of the things reading about this passage is I really love this guy. His name's David Ewart, and I've mentioned him before. He is a theologian in Canada. He's funny too, which is one of the reasons I really like him. And he says, pastors all over the country always try to explain scientifically how it could be possible that Jesus actually got out there and walked on the water. And but David said, well, believing in God is already scientifically problematic, so let's just stop there and let's just talk about the meaning of the story. So what we have, this is a great translation. This is from my hot pink Bible that I like to tote around, called The Message from Eugene Peterson. And so it just really simplifies the language in the story, which I love. And I think it's so important to make the scripture accessible. And so the story is, right before this, they had fed the 5,000. Jesus goes up to the hill to pray. I'm sure he needed some time alone. Healing all of those people was probably exhausting, so he needed to go reconnect. He does that, and he tells Peter and the disciples, "I'll meet you on the other side. I'll meet you on the other side of the sea." So the reality is, Jesus isn't walking on the water, right? Jesus is walking on the sea. And in ancient times, the sea, even now, the sea's kind of scary. And we know a lot about it. Oceanography. Science has taught us so much about the ocean. But in the time of Jesus, of course, these guys are fishermen. Their livelihood depends on the sea. They could go out at any time. It's unpredictable. It's scary. It's a deadly spirit because the sea is more powerful than them. And at any moment, right, they could lose their life. It's that unpredictable. And then you have the whole storm, and it's chaotic and agitated and chaos. So not only do you have the unpredictability of the ocean itself, or the sea, the Sea of Galilee was about 7 miles long. They're working and straining hard to get across. But then you have the storm. So then what happens? They're terrified. They can't get across. And here comes Jesus walking across the sea. The unpredictability of life. The sea can be this whole image. I just felt it's such a good image for me in what we're living in today, because the world is so chaotic. I can't listen to the radio without getting angry and agitated and terrified and fearful because of the economy and the political climate and the wars that we're in and the frustration I have with the government. And so I feel agitated right now. So they're agitated. And in the time of Jesus, with all these guys, there were a lot of believing in spirits. So it's not, it's not uncommon that they would look out and see this glowing spirit walking towards them and think it's a ghost. And of course, they're terrified. And the terrified is also translated as they're agitated and confused. There's a little confusion going on in the minds of these men as they see this ghostly figure walk towards them. And Jesus says, "It's okay, it's me." And then Jesus says, "It's okay, be hopeful." The translation is, "Be bold, be hopeful." And so what does Peter do? I mean, Peter, I've said this before. This may have been in the sermon I didn't preach last month. But I relate to Peter. I'm the bold one. I'm going to step out before I know what's really going on, because I'm so enthusiastic. So Peter says, okay, call me and I'll come. Call me. And Jesus says, come. And Peter steps out into the ocean, onto this this terrifying agitation, this confusion, all this stuff going on, and he begins to walk, and then he notices the wind, and begins to sink, and he says, "Save me!" And Jesus reaches his hand out and plucks him up out of the water. I'm an alcoholic. I'm sober. I'm not drunk this morning by the grace of God. Thank you very much in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And in 1992, couldn't say that. It was early in the morning, and it was September 23rd, and I was walking home after drinking and partying all night. And I was ashamed, and I felt guilty. I had to call my work. I was waiting tables. Because you can get really high-class jobs when you're drinking a lot. So I'm waiting tables in a dumpy restaurant, and I called my boss, and I said, "I can't come in today." Well, I had said that over and over and over. And my boss said, "Okay, but you got to get it together." And on my way home, walking home, I thought, I got to get it together. I got to get my life together. And for me, what that meant was, if I was going to church at the time, it would have been to find a new church, to find a better book, to read about how I'm going to get my life together, to become a vegetarian, to quit smoking, to stop eating sugar, to get my hair cut, to move to a new apartment. It was all these outside things. If I could just get all these outside things in order, everything would be okay. And I had no intention of getting sober. I'd been sober for 4 years. I had no intention of getting back to AA. I wanted to drink, and I wanted to get my life together, and that was the way I was going to try to work it. And I walked into my apartment, and, something happened to me. And it was a moment that I can only explain by saying that God motivated me, or there was something in that moment. And I picked up the phone and I called Alcoholics Anonymous, and they said there was a meeting in 20 minutes. And I jumped in the shower and I jumped in the cab, and I made it to that building, that little Alano club in Chicago, and I walked through the door right when they were saying, "Is anybody new?" And I raised my hand. I said, "My name's Holly. I'm an alcoholic. I've been drinking for 4 months." And at that moment, I felt like God had snatched me up by the scruff of my neck, just like a mama kitty with her babies, and dropped me into Alcoholics Anonymous one more time. How often? And in my life, it's like one experience after another, because I'm like Peter. I'm never playing it safe. And as a teenager, I was never playing it safe. I did some risky things, and it's a miracle I'm still walking around. And so for me, it has been that dramatic, where I have felt like God snatched me up again, in the middle of chaos and turbulence and drama and all this stuff, and put me into another safe place so that I could step out again. And now my drama is not so dramatic, by the grace of God also. But life is still chaotic, there's still distractions, there's still heartbreak, and death and loss. Sometimes it's just the distraction of life that keeps me from being nice to somebody when I'm driving on the freeway, and I don't want to let them in, because where I'm going is far more important than where you're going, I'm sure. And when somebody told me it's a really great spiritual practice when you go grocery shopping to when you take stuff off the shelf and you decide you don't want it, to put it back. Or to take that grocery cart and put it in that grocery cart holder thingy. Somebody recommended that as a spiritual practice. Because most of the time, I don't have time for that. Somebody else will do it. I want to leave and I want to move on to whatever the next thing is that I'm doing. And following Christ, being a Jesus follower, and I've talked before about living this kingdom of love. This is what Jesus is teaching us, right? Jesus is just teaching me to love my neighbor, to love God, to try to be a good person, put the grocery cart back and let the person in on the freeway. Sometimes these are the little things that I can do. The band is going to play later the song. We practiced it outside, and it's Gordon Gano from the Violent Femmes, who's a pastor's kid, a PK. In seminary, we call them PKs. There are a lot of PKs running around. And so he wrote this song, Jesus Walking on the Water. And part of the lyrics are, I'm paraphrasing, will I be strong enough to just step out and do the right thing? Will I be able to follow Jesus when Jesus calls me to come? And over and over again, my experience has been that when things get rough, one more time, the hand of God is there. One more time, Jesus is willing to reach out and pick me up, set me on dry land.